Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We have the honor to open the conference season of this fair. And I would like to open with 1 minute of silence dedicated to the former president of the Vicenza Fair, Mr. Cagnoni, a man of great vision and whom we will dearly miss. Thank you. Thank you very much. I wanted to remember Mr. Cagnoni because Mr. Cagnoni is a great politician, a great manager of far-sighted visions, and the agent of the success of the fair. Has put together amazing teams. He has promoted. He has done so much. What a great person. Well, Club degli Orafi Italia has the honor to present the first conference, which is about the figures. We do this every year, and we work together with Intesa Sanpaolo, Centro Ricerca, the economic department of Intesa Sanpaolo, that works together with our club. And together we put together the figures provided by Mrs. Trenti, and we provide our members with the sentiment of what is happening on the market. And this actually brings figures, but also much more. Well, our club is actually a federation, a club of members that aims at disseminating culture. So we support all events that provide culture. We provide training and information. We organize seminars on artificial intelligence, marketing, retail. So we try to be as close as possible to the needs of the market. I would like now to leave the floor to Mrs. Trenti, who's going to tell us what is happening in 2023 after the fireworks of 2022. Isn't that right, Stefania? You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning. After an extraordinary 2022, we are here to see what's going on in the gold sector in Italy and its role in the world of Italian fashion, of which it is an important part. It has been historically growing. There are some special features because this sector has 6% of the workers, but in terms of exports, it is as much as 13% of fashion exports from Italy. Most extraordinarily and a unique feature as compared with sectors which export and import a lot. Our sector has a trade balance which is extraordinary in favor of Italy. Last year, the gold sector generated a surplus of more than 7 billion. That means that those money were used to pay for the energy imports. Italy has no energy resources of its own, so that sector is very important for the competitiveness and the whole of the country. This extraordinary element was conferred for the first quarter of the year. But since we have double-digit, plus 20% of the past year, We all were expecting a slowdown, which is there, but still we have very good results. The sector is holding in terms of turnover and sales, as you see there. Also in comparison with the rest of the manufacturing sector and the fashion in Italy. There has been a plus 22% last year, and a plus 10% of the first months of this year, with a good performance, even though there is a slowing down in terms of industrial production, as we see in the chart. We know that starting from April, in other parts of the fashion and manufacturing sector, they are heavily in the negative. The sector is, in a way, breaking down. So, on the contrary, our industry is settling on the levels of the past years. Already this race started in 21 and continued in the first 6 months of the year. As for the export capacity, that is the strong point of the Made in Italy. That is the ability to export a lot with the goldsmith companies which export more than 80% of what they produce. Here too, indeed, from plus 19.6 in 22 to plus 8.6%, there has been a slowdown, but still figures are good and better than what we see in other sectors of Italian fashion industry. And also by quantity there is an increase, which is plus 2%, which is not bad after the extraordinary boom of the past year. As for the world demand, it is stable in the first 6 months. The real news is that the Chinese market and Hong Kong have been growing again. They have been affected by the measures to contain the pandemic. Then, at the end of the zero COVID policies by the Chinese government, with the reopening, there are some growth opportunities in the Eastern markets as a whole. Not very brilliant, but still good, the demand for gold jewels from the US, which did not translate into a loss in our exports. This is the first part of the year, so far so good, in a framework which was not really simple in terms of international demand. The macroeconomic scenario for the final months of 2023 and for the next year is getting more and more uncertain. As for the reviews on the first 6 months, there was a bit of pessimism. As a matter of fact, the world economy is slowing down. This because of the high inflation eroding the consumption by families and the increasing rates which have been implemented to fight inflation. But this indeed has caused the slowing down on the world growth, which indeed was something intended as stimulated by the monetary policies which reacted very rapidly with the interest rate curve, which is particularly steep as compared with the past. So we all expect a further slowing down in an uncertain picture, and the main uncertainties are due to geopolitical reasons. The war in Ukraine, the tensions concerning US and China, so the re-elections in the US and in Europe for 2024. So there is a big question mark because of these causes. On the other hand, there are some positive views because the demand for labor is good. The inflationary push is slowing down, and the energy issues are improving, and prices are going down because of that. So indeed, we could expect an end to restrictive monetary policies. However, there is a risk that the interest rates could remain high for 24 and 25, so there won't be an immediate drop when the monetary policies are no longer restrictive. So our expectations are that after the European Central Bank meetings next year could bring about a stop to the restrictive policies, so we might have improvements. Monetary policies at present are guiding the price of gold. That went down, but is beyond $2,000 per ounce in May. Then it went slightly down. As a matter of fact, the price of gold depends on the fact that investors do think that buying bonds is more appealing, because the bonds of the US are indeed much more attractive. In the coming quarters, the price of gold is expected to remain stable. As far as euros is concerned, we could have an advantage in using euro, which is expected to get stronger, to buy raw materials. That strengthening might create some problems in terms of export. Do not forget that we are speaking about made in Italy jewels, which are so high quality, so the exchange rate, as we say, is not sensitive because the demand is still there and not negatively affected by the variations in the exchange rate. Indeed, the expectations, the operators in the world of gold, and I'd like to thank Giorgio, Augusto, Laura, Elena, all these people who support us in collecting data. The survey we conducted in the past summer induces us to be optimistic. 40% of those who work in the goldsmith sector expect an increase in the sales of this year in the light of the data concerning the first part of the year. There are some differences because the smaller companies are a bit pessimistic. Still, more medium and large size companies are positive and optimistic because they have a look at international market. So these larger operators are more sensitive to international demand. As we see here, in terms of the expectations concerning the growth in foreign markets by medium-large companies is about 70%. So 2/3 those who work in the sector of gold and jewels expect to grow. We decided to study new subjects. We wanted to see something more about the growth and whether that could indeed be a driving engine for investments. One company out of 3 in the gold industry is expecting to invest more, and they already invest a lot, to invest more than 2022. And this is good because that will improve their competitiveness. The main reason they decide to invest more is due to the competition. Companies watch what competitors do and they respond consequently. And they indeed also expect to be growing on international markets. And that drives investments. Competitiveness is the key element in our industry. It is typical of a production model which is made of a supply chain of different producers. Indeed, Intesa Sanpaolo studied competition also in other industries. And we were surprised because in other industries, competition coming from low-cost companies or emerging countries like China and India, or because of the technology level of Germany and the US. As a matter of fact, the ability and the capability is a typical element of the made in Italy production. And this shows that Italy is unique. I mean, the competitors in the eyes of the people of the sector are their neighbors. Something which is growing is European competitors, second line. We did not indicate the countries, but in the light of the changes in the market shares, we were thinking of Turkey more than Germany, Spain or others, because they don't have a made-in-Italy jewelry supply, and some companies perceive no risks, third group of bars. On the other hand, the most important thing in terms of difficulties perceived by the operators of the sector, as in the past surveys, the issue of finding skilled labor, as 40% or as much as 70% in medium and large companies. They are afraid of that, in particular in the general picture of the slowing down the performance of demand. So they are aware that demand may slow down in the next quarter. But the skillful labor force is another key element in that. It is perceived as a key element also to obtain success. Success factors is this ability, the professionalism, the craftsmanship of production, the 3 longest bars. The being able to do is something which is difficult to convey to the workers. And it is for this reason that the demand for skillful worker is a key element in order to maintain the top quality, which has been the reason for success. Thank you very much, Mrs. Trenti, for this overview.
Centro.
So thank you very much for this great cooperation with your research center of Intesa Sanpaolo. Augusto, past president of our club. Since you actually work directly in the field, you can probably address the main worries that have been identified by the market research that we have carried out internally. Sure, thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. As usual, Mrs. Trenti's presentation is extremely precious. I mean, this is a precious industry since we deal in precious items, but the information you have provided us is very precious as well, and the club and Intesa Sanpaolo together try to provide companies with all these relevant data. These are important signals for entrepreneurs and for the whole industry. So thank you very much again, Stefania, for the clear presentation of topics which are fundamental to make an analysis and to see the situation of our industry and to continue with the positive progression of our industry since COVID, the COVID pandemic. Every time I have to start by describing what this industry means. 345,000 companies with more than 300,000 headcount. These are the data of the Chamber of Commerce of Arezzo, second quarter 2023. So we're talking about an industry which is really significant, and if we analyze what Mrs. Trenti told us, well, this means that we have 879 employees per company. In other words, we know that there are structural transformations that are ongoing, but we're talking about an industry which has always had this kind of structure. But it is a very important industry, 30,500 employees producing not only quantity, but mainly quality. The beautiful and well-made products, the made in Italy in jewelry. So 13 billion turnover in 2022. I mean, this is something that doesn't hurt our country for sure. And we talk about 10 billion export, worth of export. Well, I believe that we gave a positive contribution to our trade balance. So this industry gives a significant contribution to our economy, but not only to our economy, but also to the reputation, because the quality of the Italian products increases the Italian reputation worldwide. Our industry has been the world leader in the export of jewelry all over the world for a long time. The eastern countries took over, and with ups and downs, we are still a reference in export markets, and I shall quote only the first three ones. The United States, this is our number one market in 2022. Switzerland, and we all know that Switzerland is a hub for the distribution of the Italian products. The same is true for France, which ranks similar to Switzerland, and then the Arab Emirates, another significant hub characterized by significant growth. All the countries in that perimeter are becoming an important reference point for a whole area that has acquired a significant weight logistically, also compensating for the gaps that existed in the Eastern world. So our industry is becoming more and more active in that area. With the progressive growth that was described by the previous speaker, that sometimes makes us forget that the COVID pandemic took place only 2 years ago, and 2 years ago companies were not working. They were frozen, and you probably remember how difficult it was in those nights when we had to discontinue production, not knowing whether we would have ever resumed it. We did not know whether the orders in our portfolio would have really been products to be resold. And entrepreneurs deserve the merit of keeping their position, of never giving up, of keeping the control of their companies, because at that moment it was extremely important to keep alive the sense of being an enterprise even when the factories were empty. And this success is certainly due to the type of relationship that entrepreneurs have with their own companies. I may sound excessively paternalistic. I have always tried to tackle issues as if we are one big family. But this has allowed the entrepreneurial skills to reactivate with organization and quality a system that, as soon as it was possible, started working like anything and obtained amazing results. So we have had people rolling up their sleeves and working hard, and the level of quality of our companies has played a role. An organization at every possible level, and skills, competencies, the capability of producing wonderful products, manufacturing skills, craftsmanship, trade capabilities, commercial capabilities, because in a time when the only communication possible was digital, it was a problem to transport goods, but entrepreneurs managed to overcome this problem, proving that Italians can make it. And results have arrived because the structure was healthy, because the structure consisted of small, medium, large enterprise that all together managed to restart the machinery and give new life with an extraordinary result. So, excellent entrepreneurs, excellent organization in the companies, professionalism of the employees, and the Made in Italy value, which has greatly contributed to the success of our companies. Many entrepreneurs and significant support from the Italian Foreign Trade Commission, the ICE, that has always worked in synergy with our industry, promoting our exports, supporting our export. Of course, we have just heard about the problem of our industry. Attracting human capital, training human capital, retaining human capital is now the fundamental key to maintain the competitiveness of our industry. And this also has an impact on the concept of made in Italy, beautiful and well made, which is the added value for which we are recognized and which allows us to export our products. All this, beyond geopolitical, social, economic, all externalities, points out that our industry is transforming. So I told you before that we have an average number of employees in the Valenza district equal to 8, 9 in Vicenza, 7 in Arezzo. But well-known brands have seen in our country the possibility and the opportunity to create, to meet the needs of the market. I'm talking about Cartier, Bulgari, and all the big brands that have decided to invest and manufacture in our country. The largest European manufacturing facilities was built about 10 years ago in Valenza by Bulgari. It is doubling now with 700 employees plus another 700 employees to come. The same is true for Cartier, that in Valenza is going to employ 200 more people. The same is true in Turin. I mean, something is happening. something is happening which the traditional small enterprises of the traditional Italian manufacturing structure, which we can see out here at the fair. It shows that things have changed because large groups have decided to move there where you can find skills and competencies. Valenza is a beautiful place, but that's not why European investments are actually catalyzing in Valenza. So how can we make use of this change, of this transformation? Small enterprises used to have ups and downs in their production. With the crisis, they were working less. But the whole industry managed to hold its position. It is clear that when a large group makes a production plan for 1 year, the artisan, the craftsman, can count on continuity. But all this goes with the vision of repeating certain types of products, certain styles. Large brands are repetitive because they have big quantities. Craftsmen have small quantities with a lot of creativity, with a high artisanal value. So it is art and craft in the hands of those who manage to produce beautiful items. So there is the danger that it may be difficult to find adequate human resources. Alta Gamma envisages that the product demand will outgrow the present availability of products. But why is this happening? How comes that we have a vacuum? Why is it so difficult to find specialized labor? For sure, entrepreneurs are responsible for that. The paternalistic attitude, the fact of viewing our companies as an enlarged family, and also the confidentiality. We all know that our industry is particularly confidential. So it has always been a world that has been closed to the wider audience. This is true also for the fairs. They're not open to the public. Last year, Vicenza Fair invited young people, opened up the fair to young people, and that was a great initiative because communication will allow us to attract, to showcase the beauty of what our companies can do. If we do not have the attractiveness to allure new generations, we will never be able to replace those workers who will leave our companies in the coming years after acquiring competence in the previous 40 years. That know-how will leave the company, since the new employees do not have all that know-how and knowledge. So it is very risky, and entrepreneurs have to think about that. We have ignored certain aspects. This is true. A wonderful research, a wonderful study carried out by Confartigianato focuses on skills and competencies and the generational shift. This is going to be one of the fundamental elements. This is clear. So important competencies will leave our production system, and new generations will need training. To train them, you need know-how. You need an internal structure, but the know-how of the people leaving our companies is so precious, we cannot let it go. The Swiss watch industry was able to overcome this issue. I remember when the Swiss watch industry underwent a crisis with the Eastern electronic watches competing against the Swiss system and causing problems to it, threatening it. But they maintained, they held their know-how and their competencies in Switzerland, focusing on their own employees. And today, they are the top of the game. They are a niche. They do not compete with Eastern products. Our system, our beautiful and well-made productions must go in the same direction. We need to preserve our knowledge. We need to instruct and train young people so that we can go on in this direction. Otherwise, we will lower our level and we will suffer from the competition from Turkey, which is already very much developed in terms of labor compared to us. Competition will come from China, from India, countries that have labor availability, but they do not have the top of the range. So next to the big value of our companies, our manufacturing companies, chain production in Vicenza, for instance, we're talking about advanced technology, we're talking about the introduction of systems that you do not find on the internet. You have to have it in your brain. You have to be an expert entrepreneur and understand that your employee is going to invent your system, is going to make a model, to repeat a model, to update the model to the new needs of the growing and expanding markets. The analysis made by Confartigianato also pinpoints that wages and salaries are not the number one factor for young people. Of course, it is important, but it is not the determinant factor. And of course, salaries and wages increase mobility and turnover, because if they pay you more, you leave your company and go and work for somebody else. I mean, today there is a lot of talk in Italy about salaries and wages, but we should also consider the dialogue that we need to entertain with the young people, with the new generations. So jobs must be fun. They must allow for professional valorization. Young people want to be appreciated. Young people want to have a vision. In the past, entrepreneurs never talked about these items to people coming to get a job in their company. Well, today we need specific professional initiatives, able to communicate the beauty of our industry. We need to open these doors. We need to have young people coming here. They need to talk to our entrepreneurs. We need to be able to communicate in a continuous way. Otherwise, since our country is aging, we will keep working with our old people who eventually will leave our companies, bringing their know-how away from our companies. Schools, families. Why am I talking about families? Because families influence young people's decisions significantly. Professionalism that brought from vocational schools new employees. Well, vocational schools have not been supported. So it is good to promote culture at higher levels, but we also need people able to make things, because our companies need these young people. So the civil society plays a fundamental role, and institutions also do. Last year, Minister D'Urso, who had just been elected, in a presentation at Alta Gamma said, we must safeguard companies, because companies are the value of made in Italy items. And the idea was to set up a Made in Italy ministry. So if we have a ministry of the Made in Italy, then we need to take all these points, and we have to start from communicating to young generation the value of craftsmanship, the capability of bringing our beautiful products all over the world, which you cannot take for granted, because in the past we used to go abroad with our suitcases or briefcases. My father-in-law, who could not speak English, went to the United States with 2 suitcases full of jewelry, and when he came back, he had sold everything, including the 2 suitcases of jewelry. So they're actually people exporting from Istanbul, China. I mean, luckily, this is the most precious fair in this industry in Europe, for Europe, with the know-how of and a concentration of know-how and companies that prove what we can actually do, that testify to the value of our industry. So we must all be part of this enormous cultural revolution. So we need to further develop the culture of our industry, because if we do not have this culture, if we do not communicate that this is an individual and a collective heritage, it is wealth, it is turnovers. If we don't communicate this, our future will be a difficult one, because our country is aging and we need people to remain in Italy, young people, rather than going abroad. So how can we encourage this savoir-faire? Well, somebody has tried to do that, and I would like to quote them. Also because they highlight certain important aspects. Maestri d'eccellenza, LVMH, together with Fendi, Confartigianato, Camera della Moda, have gathered in Rome a high number of young people, and they have started talking, communicating to these young people, showing them the different levels of quality craftsmanship, trying to increase their awareness, trying to capture their attention towards something which is not just a job, but it is also beautiful. And having a beautiful job means that you are individually gratified. And I was really stricken by what Mrs. Carla Fendi said. The homologation of globalization is such that the mastery expressed by ancient jobs has to be safeguarded just like a work of art, especially in our country. So, of course, we need resources. If schools have no resources, if vocational schools have no resources, then the problem is very difficult to solve. But we need resources as well as a vision, the knowledge of the value of our system and of the ongoing transformation, a transformation which we cannot escape. We cannot just wait for somebody else to decide about the future of our industry. Entrepreneurs are amazing machines. They have worked miracles in our country. They were able to stimulate intelligence and creativity. And we cannot lose all this. But we must also remember about all this. During a meeting of our club, talking about entrepreneurial culture, Gabriele Basis, a theater director, who was invited to our club, told us, we must go on communicating and disseminating the value of our job, because this is the heritage of our culture, and we need to do that with young people. Otherwise, we will have a problem. Our club has always committed itself to this kind of initiatives. Initiatives that have a value. Our president always says that we produce culture. Culture is important, and the whole world would be in danger if there is no more culture. We have a great opportunity, as demonstrated by this fair and by the figures that we have just heard. We need to make use of this opportunity. We have a competitive advantage, and we must use it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before concluding, I would like to ask you some questions. We are thinking about the most important brands in Italy, which have very nice skills. We know that small companies, in a way, that are overshadowed by large brands. Large brands have a way of having workers getting specialized. Don't you think that there are some warning signs against the made in Italy idea? I have to say yes. You know, when I was the chairperson of Lombardi at the Mani Intelligenti Foundations, we raised the issue. We have more than 60 members there. The members are Cartier, Bulgari, but also others, one in Valencia who has 2 employees. That has been a very important initiative. Mrs. Crivelli made all efforts there, so created a dialogue on that very important subject. That is so important also for very important brands like Bulgari, who indeed, of course, needs creativity and creative skills. Indeed, they have a plant in Valencia. And the culture of skilled workers is very important. Nobody wants to lose it. But when we go to the trade fair, we have to dress properly, use a tie, and propose new things. This is a question which comes from people like you in the audience. What's new? Maybe we have met in Las Vegas 2 months before, and there is always something new to propose. There are always new models because people are putting efforts in their crafts. And crafts people, you know, study the financial statements afterwards, not before working. And I will continue to affirm that we should not waste and lose that culture. We have no interest in that, so we have to support and feed it. When craftspeople come to the trade fair and get no orders, I mean, if the large brands offer a contract for 6 months, they might accept. So what is the gist of that? We have to continue with promoting trade. The ICE agency supporting Made in Italy might meet with the Orafi and also the other association, but also with the entrepreneurs who are not represented in large associations. That's something we have to do. We need commitment. There are issues like the minimum salary, which are equally important. We have to make people understand that even though we are losing newborns in the country, we have a strength, that is our skills. So we have to work together. You, as president of Club Orafi, are working on that. We have to work with you. We have to improve the dialogue with new generations. We need to raise interest in that, to strike a balance among the different needs. When Alta Gamma states that the forecast for the coming years is plus 6% for the next 5 years, this is a growth. But I mean, we have problems in producing today, but if we need to produce more, there will be some issues unless we go to have products produced in Turkey, then re-import them back and put our brand. Nobody would have thought that clusters like Valenza could have other actors. Jewels are no longer only made in Valenza. They do them in Milan, in Florence. There is a very high quality craftsmanship. So we have to combine all these skills. Also in Torre del Greco, they should be not be wasted. We can improve sales because we have multiple identities, and this is an incredible strength of our industry. So also I have to read an article from the La Stampa. I read a wonderful article yesterday night at the hotel. In the light of the brilliant results of 2022, it states the performance of the industry is very good. There have been improvements. Still, the industry has not yet been able to make a major step forward. Hoping that the conditions are there, with the exception of some areas, using jewels to sell tons of gold, to using gold to make jewels. This is an extraordinary analysis of the reasons why people are making wonderful sales. Maybe, Stefania, we could break down the different elements. If it is just well manufactured gold is one thing, but the manufacturing is going hands in hand with gold. I mean, that's a different added value. If we simply are those who sell image, quality, raw materials, our numbers will be different. Thank you very much, Augusto, for this answer. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have to thank Fiera Vicenza for offering the opportunity to have this talk. Mrs. Trenti, numbers are indeed very important to guide our work. Augusto, thank you very much for your comments, and thank you all for attending.